Well, there we go. So today is the first Sunday of Advent, and I grew up in a church where we didn't really celebrate Advent. I didn't really know about it until I got to college, and I've under the understanding y'all have done Advent wreaths and Advent stuff before. I'm not the biggest Advent person, but I do love the certain aspect of Advent that reminds us that he came once and he's coming again. I think for me, and oftentimes I focus on Christmas about the baby in the manger. But that baby grew up, didn't he? That baby is coming one day on a white horse, and we have to remember that. The people weren't ready the first time he came. We need to get ready again for him coming again. Not only get ourselves ready, but get others ready. So each Sunday, before I start the sermon, we're going to do a video speaking of Advent, giving one of the emphases of Advent. Today's emphasis is hope. So here's a little video. Hope. We hope for better. The first emphasis of Advent, at least this Advent Sunday, is hope. The video talked about us clinging to hope, clinging to Jesus. Hope is very powerful, isn't it? One of my favorite Christmas gifts, and I've still got it. It's in the boys' room in their closet in the very top shelf, unless somebody's moved it. Is an atlas. You may say to yourself, preacher, an atlas? And I grew up in the age of, where video games started coming out, Nintendos and Segas, and computers started coming popular, and I had Transformers toys and He-Man toys and all these different things. But my favorite gift definitely wasn't the clothes. My favorite gift as a kid was an atlas. And I'll tell you why. It's not the atlas itself, but the note my mother put in that atlas. For all the places you'll go one day. You see, Mama spent her whole life working hard. She, barely finished high school, and she got, a job, making a little bit of money, not a whole lot, but, we scraped by as a kid growing up, especially a single-parent household. We scraped by. But Mama always wanted me to go to college so I wouldn't have to work hard the rest of my life. She hoped for better for me. We hope. Sometimes the situation in life is not ideal. Sometimes life gets really hard, and the world is just so broken. But we hope for better. We have faith that one day God will make things right. One day our world will be not quite as crazy. Our world will not be quite as broken and quite as sinful. We hope. We look forward. Hope is a powerful thing. Whether you like him or not, our last president, President Obama, ran on a campaign of hope. Whether he gave us that hope or not, I don't know. But he ran on a campaign of hope. It was powerful. It invigorated people. Hope is something very powerful. We as Christians do not need to give up on the hope that God has given us. He gave us hope when he came in a manger in a little podunk town in the backwaters of the Roman Empire. And we have the hope he'll come again to set this world right, to give us justice and righteousness where the wickedness prevails. We hold out hope. In Jeremiah and Luke, we're going to look at some issues of hope and some passages talking about hope. But first, let's start talking about Jeremiah 33, 15 through 16. We're going to talk about hope for Jeremiah and his people in the shadow of Babylon. Let me read this passage to you. Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 14. Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the promise I made to the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. You see, Jeremiah was written, or at least the Jeremiah the prophet preached, during a time of a lot of chaos and turmoil. Judah, this little small empire, essentially was just not much more than a land around Jerusalem. These major empires had come through and whittled away their peace because Judah was economically important because it was in the middle of a main thoroughfare between major empires. It was in the crossroads, if you will. Everybody wanted a piece of it. So the Egyptians at one point wanted a piece of it. The Syrians, Neo-Assyrians, Neo-Babylonians, all these different people groups, the superpowers of the day wanted it. But it decimated the people of Israel, the people of what was Judah at that time. It was whittled down to almost nothing by the time of Jeremiah. But it wasn't just that. The wickedness was in the land. Different idols still prevailed. Even though King Josiah had a great reform that's talked about in Second Chronicles and 2 Kings, and a lot of these idols were torn down in the temple and thrown away and burned, whatever, the people still went back as soon as Josiah was murdered. They went back to those idols. They went back to those wicked gods. In fact, we even find after the Babylonians took away some people that they still practice idolatry in the temple during Ezekiel's time. Ezekiel writes about this. Jeremiah's about the same time. You see, the Babylonians came in. They took away people. They exiled. They snatched people at least twice, deported people at least twice. And eventually they would destroy the temple in Jerusalem and pretty much decimate the land. All hope was about gone. In fact, you ever read the book of Lamentations, it's set in that aftermath of what was left of Jerusalem after the Babylonians had their destructive party. But the days are coming, Jeremiah writes, declared the Lord, when I will fulfill the promise that I made. They had hope. Even though their life was torn apart with these deportations and destruction of Jerusalem, even though their life was torn asunder, they had hope. In those days, at the time I will cause a righteous branch to spring up for David. He shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. They had wicked kings, they had an evil empire bearing down on them, but one day God will send somebody, a righteous branch, to execute justice and righteousness in the land. In a land of corruptness, moral corruptness, justice, social justice corruptness, they longed for righteousness. They hoped that one day God would come and set things right. They looked forward to God's hope. In those days, Judah will be saved and Jerusalem will dwell securely. And this is the name by which it will be called. The Lord is our righteousness. They look forward to that day that Jesus would, or at least a Savior would come, I should say. Time of Jesus, things were dark. Even after the time of Jesus, when we see that the Romans, after the time of Jesus, they started bearing down Jerusalem and eventually would destroy the temple, things were dark. People needed hope. Jesus tells the disciples, so some of his disciples were remarking about how the temple was adorned with beautiful stones and with gifts dedicated to God. This temple was lavish. The temple that Herod had built, the second temple, I mean, it was the most